Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Six Pixels Under podcast. I am Nerdslayer, your host, and today we have a couple things we will be talking about. I'm moving around some aspects here and there on the screen, so you'll see things change. But the biggest changes you'll notice immediately are going to be I've tried to add a little bit of a backdrop so it doesn't look so boring. And then whenever we go to a different topic, we're going to be changing the topic underneath the logo here. So it'll say whatever the topic is. Say, for example, current gaming news. Anyway, let's waste no time, and I think we should already get started on discussing some of the current gaming news. All right, so that's basically the change. Now you can actually see where I'm at over here. And then the chat on screen, we're going to be editing that. I'm not sure if that's going to look 100% yet, but we're deciding to leave the chat on screen so people who are watching in YouTube, for example, can actually enjoy it to some extent. Okay, so let's get into our first topic already. And our first topic of the day of the podcast, this quiet, it's like 70 degrees here in Austin at the moment. So it's a pretty nice weather Monday. The first bit of news that I wanted to get to is actually the Blizzard rumors about an unannounced project. I'm sure you guys have already heard of these or are interested in hearing more about these. All I know is that there was an article recently posted a few days ago about some more job openings regarding this unannounced project. And the thing that I find interesting about it all is obviously like we knew that Blizzard was working on a Diablo project, but I think that ended up being the mobile game, so we can kind of cross that off the list. But we basically have no ideas about what this could possibly be, and I think it'd be fun to kind of speculate a little bit here. Cardin chat says that Blizzard always has an unannounced project. That's true, but we're going to use this as an opportunity to speculate a little bit. And let's talk about the possibilities of another massive multiplayer online game, from a Blizzard stable or a Blizzard IP. And I think people would probably say the more likely one is Diablo compared to StarCraft. I'd probably agree. I would say that Diablo probably has a bigger chance of being an MMO at some point. It's kind of like a different genre to some extent compared to World of Warcraft, and it's also I also feel like it's a little bit of an untapped potential because you don't really see a whole lot of isometric MMOs, especially like currently. I mean, really the only ones that you can say that kind of partially qualify would be like Path of Exile. Diablo 3 tried in some ways to add like MMO aspects like auction houses and whatever else, but really I think they kind of failed. And I think it's kind of funny, a little bit off topic, but I think it's kind of funny that Path of Exile kind of like took the Diablo franchise and was like, we're going to do it better, and basically did it better than Diablo 3. So I always like hypothesized in my mind that like maybe that would be a reason why they would, make another Diablo MMO. But obviously, just speculation. What do you guys think in chat? Do any of you guys think that the Diablo universe is the most likely one compared to a Warcraft 2, a Warcraft 3, or some other kind of game? I definitely feel like it's pretty likely to see a Diablo MMO versus any of the other kinds. An ARPG MMO would be sick. They need to use the combat of Diablo to some extent. If not, I would not see the point. Yeah, I would agree. I'm totally fine with an isometric or an ARPG type MMO. In fact, I think we need to see more of those.
Apathy is death.
Thank you for following the Bloody Bandicoot Took. I wasn't 100% sure if I should turn those off, but I left them on with much less volume. All right, so let's get on to my next topic, which is going to be one of, I would probably say this is a topic that's like most people's kind of favorite in regards to such topics, and that's pay to win. Let's talk about Black Desert Online. Okay, I need to show you guys, let's post a couple articles here. All right, so this Black Desert Online conversation was prompted because I noticed, according to multiple subreddits, multiple players, and there's been a big hoopla over the recent Black Desert Online remaster. And I think the biggest complaints people have been having is there's been some pay-to-win changes, apparently. And these changes, as detailed right here, apparently made it to where... Do you guys remember in my ArcAge video, I talked about how there was like the Thunder Wood or whatever, and you had to keep reverse engineering it in order to get other gear, but you had the potential chance to downgrade your gear, and this was basically being bought excuse me. This has been bought by money, so you're spending money on this item, and you're having to reverse engineer it over and over again, which essentially makes it to where it's going to have like a base level of a base level cost, even just to be like somewhat competitive. And people actually did this math. And so that's kind of what I'm showing you here. This is the full damage control. People were just talking about how the moderators have been kind of like sweeping things under the rug, and developers have not been acknowledging such things, which shouldn't surprise people. Whenever you implement such a thing, you're not going to exactly be in a position where you want to greet people or talk about such mechanics. And here's basically the mechanic explained for everybody. It's the mechanic absence was supposed to be okay, so it's not explaining it here. All right, so it says your equipment in BDO has a chance to downgrade when enhancing it at higher tiers, or attempts to enhance a cost, a metric ton, or as he says, a metric fuck ton of in-game wealth. And I already did the research, and I found this cool thread where the guy basically breaks down how much money you need to spend in Black Desert Online, and I found this really interesting. So if you look at it, the game itself right now is currently running for about $10. But if you want like the 90-day value pack, which most people suggest you should get, isn't it like $57? It's basically like a full game price. You have tier 3 pets, which apparently you need pets in this game for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not the biggest Black Desert Online, so maybe someone in the comments can explain to me. But you need a bare minimum of $200 to spend on pets. And so then you have your gear score. And if you want to have a certain level of gear score, you have to spend, it says a minimum $120 for 300 artisan frags. And then I think it's even more past here. Yeah, then it's another $20 to $34 to buy a pearl outfit and then melt it for a certain amount of stones. So this actually right here doesn't even tell you the bare minimum you would spend. This is just like you're at least going to spend like $150 at a bare minimum. Not necessarily it. Okay, someone in chat says, you can't buy gear or anything of the sort in WoW. You just earn it directly. It's RNG. But everything you can earn is a randomized slot machine. Oh, wow. Yeah, that does sound like gambling at this point. But check out these other things that you have to spend money on. You have to get a ghillie suit if you want to be a PvPer, because it allows you to be like tougher to track. They can't see your character model in the same way. There's certain outfits that give you more combat experience, skill experience, and weapon durability consumption. Apparently there's a campsite that gives you extra storage and allows you to repair your gear. Basically, these are all a bunch of extra things, but these are kind of like what we call pay to convenience, where you pay for the convenience, essentially. I mean, if you look at this, if we sit here and do the math on this, we're talking like at a base level, if you want to be competitive within a couple of months, it looks like you're at least going to have to spend $300 to $500, which is a lot. I mean, seriously. Like, can we talk about that for a second? I mean, I know it's easy to beat up on free-to-play games, and most people thought that by Black Desert Online going buy-to-play, it would somehow reduce the amount of spending that would happen within the game. But, I mean, I don't think any of us ever truly expected that it wouldn't be, but I don't think, at least I didn't expect that it would continue to get more pay to win and would continue to be more monetized as development went on. It's almost like, the way I think about it is Pearl Abyss looks at their fan base as, okay, how much can we get out of them? And I don't blame them. And here's what I mean. Ultimately, I don't blame them, because if you have really bad business practices, yes, some people will still buy it, especially because they're desperate. But let's just be honest right now. Black Desert Online thrives the most right now because ArcheAge made so many mistakes, and it also has a bit of a unique combat system in comparison to other titles such as Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, Elder Scrolls Online, Final Fantasy. I feel like it occupies a bit of like a strange niche right now, which is strange because the strangest thing I should say about it is that they have pretty low reviews. Like, Black Desert Online is not really doing well if you're going to talk about critical opinion, but it's still one of the most played games, and you can quickly see that on Steam or on like for example, I just clicked on the profile. Black Desert Online is sitting at mostly negative in recent reviews. That's 37% out of 680 reviews. And then in terms of all reviews, it's sitting at 64% out of 11,502 reviews, which basically proves that even though they're occupying at less than what our expectations are for a massive multiplayer online game, it doesn't matter because we don't really have anything else to play. And I think that this is a big reason why Pearl Abyss is able to get away with things like this, because at the end of the day, I mean, the audience has revolted before and has complained before, but have they ever just stopped playing the game? I mean, in big droves? I don't know. Maybe you guys that are involved in Black Desert, you guys can tell me, is the sky falling right now? Let me know in chat, or let me know personally. But as far as I can tell, it just looks like more par for the course. How much can you squeeze out of your audience?
But you've got the wrong
Hey,
guy.
thanks for subbing, RC Win.
People, cracking wise, and pretending to know how to fight with my hands.
I appreciate that. They will kill EVE Online if they follow the pattern. Yeah, I'm hoping that they don't. And yes, welcome to chat, Cursus. I appreciate you joining us. Hey, Goosey B. Hey, Nerdsayer, love the podcast. I play BDO to level 50 and got bored. What do you think about Boundless? Boundless? I have no idea what Boundless is. Anyway, to jump to the next topic really quickly, we can do some more audio or audience interaction kind of as we get past the news part of the podcast, because this is kind of generally going to be the more I report on something and then we just talk about it a little bit. But I'm free to talk about any of this after the segments. So the next topic that I wanted to talk about was this is one that's been up in news right now. No, it's okay, Goosey. But this is one that's been kind of all over games subreddit, and I would say just about any outlet that'll cover it. And that's Belgian government opens a criminal investigation into EA. And so I know some of you have heard about this already. There's, as far as I know, there's really nothing new about this, except that EA is basically going to contest whatever Belgium is trying to say. And to Spark Notes it for everybody, so I don't have to read this entire article, though you're more than welcome to read it. I'm going to link it into the chat. But essentially, the concept is that EA realizes that Belgium is basically the very big. I don't know why I called it Belgium then Belgian, but anyway, Belgium is kind of like, in my opinion, the first frontier. It's serving as like, this could be a domino effect, depending on how things go, depending on how it's enforced, depending on how people react, and maybe how public opinion reacts. But I think that Belgium could really be like the first frontier. And what I mean by this is that if we can have some level of success or implementation, like just success meaning like implementation and public opinion, then maybe it's possible in these other European countries we can start to push back against practices such as loot boxes and gambling and all of this sort of stuff that honestly, like, let's take some time to talk about it. It's not good. It's never been good, but I really think that we've allowed so many developers now at this point, free to play and microtransactions have at least been around for like 11 years. At least just like on a basis level. They've been around since around 2007, 2008. If you look back at like Nexon Interactive, who was like the first one to really implement a lot of microtransactions. Anyway, now you see basically all the major companies, Blizzard, Valve, you see it with Bethesda, you see it with EA, anyone else that I'm missing here. They're basically all exhibiting some different manner of like microtransactions. Now, EA has like traditionally been the worst. And I think that EA has been the worst because of its sports games. And as far as I know, that's the main reason why Andrew Wilson of Electronic Arts is ready to go to bat in court. They're ready to fight. And basically their case is that they don't believe that their form of microtransaction is a loot box. Right, so like it says it here in the article, EA might be readying for a legal battle over loot boxes rather than giving in without a fight. And the main reason for that, if people don't know, FIFA Team or any of the sports franchises, they've been doing microtransactions for actually some time, and they're one of EA's biggest cash cows, especially FIFA Team. As far as I know, FIFA Team makes them like $1 billion or close to $1 billion. It's something ridiculous, and that's one of the most blatant examples of microtransactions. I think the government is getting involved in this loot box banning, or regulation is bad. I'm not sure what you mean by that, MGPT. But yeah, so that's what I've noticed, and my thoughts on it really just come down to, like I said, this is the first frontier. If other countries can maybe start to band together and collectively start to ban such things, and at least even if they don't win in court, like let's say they lose in court because somehow EA is able to convince them that what they're doing is not a loot box, even if they can do that much, at least they've added some level of resistance. It makes sense for people wondering why Electronic Arts would challenge a government over such a thing. It's money. At the end of the day, it's money. Like, EA is not going to go down without a fight. I know everybody got caught up in the whole drama about Star Wars Battlefront and the microtransactions, and it's going to take 3,000 hours to get all the unlocks, and people were really angry about that thing. But let's be honest, like, the only reason why Electronic Arts really cared is because Disney, who owns the IP, who allows them to create all of these Star Wars games, basically spank them and rake them over the coals. Like, at the end of the day, these companies don't care unless we make them care. And I remember hearing a lot of hoopla, for example, about Shadow of War, that recent Middle-earth game, and I didn't see a whole lot of people sticking to their guns. So in my opinion, if you're going to be the person who's like against certain practices, you need to practice what you preach. But I know that ultimately, it's going to be a slow process. We're not going to be able to get rid of this immediately. But I think that in large part is because we've normalized it. We've allowed it to become normal. Whereas, like, if you look at a free-to-play MMO, I mean, you expect it to have microtransactions because that's kind of the way it's monetized. But these days, even buy-to-play games, even subscription-based games, even just multiplayer games, $60 games, like full box price games, are offering microtransactions straight out the gate. And many of them start to offer it for single-player experiences. We saw that back with Dead Space. We've seen that with all the sports games pretty much. In fact, I think every sports game that's like basically out there for EA, like even the UFC games, has some level of microtransactions within like the career mode or whatever. It's insane. Finland has raised issue as well. Okay. So apparently, people are saying that Finland is also ready to go to bat over the discussion and over over this situation. But I'm just reading chat right now to see what people are reacting to. Knowing the government, they will not stop in banning loot boxes. They will try to sneakily pass other laws. Yeah, and that's kind of my fear, MGPT. I see what you're saying now. My fear is that ultimately, the way business works is there's always a way to kind of find a loophole to some extent. And maybe loot boxes become a band's name or a banned like commodity. Maybe they find another way. To do some type of gambling or some type of randomness. I mean, look at games like ArcAge and we just talked about Black Desert Online. These games that literally have mechanics built into the MMO that make it to where you can like break down your gear for a chance at better gear. Like, it's literally gambling. And imagine there's like kids doing this stuff. Like, if you guys remember, at some point, Facebook actually got sued, and so did Microsoft. They both got sued because it was so easy. Oh, sorry, Apple also got sued. It was so easy for kids to make purchases on these like microtransaction filled like mobile games, and they were spending like I think if I remember correctly, Zynga or one of those companies that does a bunch of those free to play games was making like a couple mil every day. So, and like I think it was at one point they were making like 50 to 100 mil a month. Like, microtransactions on the cell phones are crazy, but to me, in a massive multiplayer online game, it's the best game for pay to win, and that simply is because massive multiplayer online games take the most take the most dedication, the most what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm blanking out. But they take the most amount of time invested. You're going to have to spend 10, 20, 30, 40 hours to get your gear set. But why get a gear set when you can just pay for the convenience of it? You can just buy the outfit. Or you can get like the Thunder, the Thunderwood, where you can potentially get this rare piece of gear that's like randomized or whatever, it starts to become quite addictive. And as a kid who used to gamble a lot online in video games, by the way, it's something that we need to watch out for, certainly. Okay, so, someone in chat said that Shadow of War removed their loot boxes and cash shop. So I guess that was good enough for people, as long as they just removed whatever they wanted them to remove. Okay, so yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Does anyone else have anything to say about any of these topics? I think I'm ready to move on from here. My favorite in mobile games is paying for ads being removed. Yeah, these days ads are just, man, ads are just all over the place. Like, you try and read certain articles like Forbes on your phone, and you get met with like you guys ever seen the double ad, where it's like an ad followed by another ad, and you're trying to like scroll to like exit the ad, but you can't because you're trapped in like a double ad? Yeah, I somehow imagine the world of MMOs in like this virtual reality, and you walking around in this virtual reality, and there's just like pop-ups on your screen like, have you subbed yet? Have you paid for your subscription? If you want, you can get an extra mailbox, you know, blah 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 blah. And it's just like, I don't know, I think of like this dystopian reality where like everything is an ad. Like, isn't that a South Park meme where they're like, everything is an ad? even non-ads or ads or whatever. Anyway, there's lawsuits. Yeah, everyone in chat is basically remarking about how kind of screwed up it is. How do you not get political discussing government lawsuits? I mean, you can get political to some extent, but I guess ultimately it's more so about the events or the situation itself, more so than it is like some specific agenda or anything of that sort. I'm going to go ahead and move to my next segment, Counterpoint. And that is a segment where I basically pick a topic, a popular topic at the time, and I play devil's advocate. So I start to argue kind of in a way for the bad side. I think it's like an interesting little segment, and I think if you guys haven't seen the podcast already, you'll enjoy it. Okay, so I have to do this on the fly. I have to change my little title track on the fly, so you're going to see that change really quickly. Anyway, there we go. So for the next segment, we're going to talk about crossplay. I feel like this is a really good topic to talk about. Sorry, somebody just followed. Thank you for following NPVNPV. You guys, again, let me know in the comments. Let me know in chat if I should get rid of the sounds completely, if I should even mention when people follow or sub or anything of that sort. Oh, which, by the way, I should mention that I think that in terms of the sub goal, this is a very easy sub goal for us to reach, okay? So let me explain the sub goal. 50 people is the current sub goal for the podcast, and that means that I will do every podcast in outfit, in my detective outfit. So I decided I'd make it an easy way to get people to interact and also build up my sub base. So if you guys are wondering what that sub goal means on the screen, that's what it means. Anyway, to get into Counterpoint, the topic we are going to talk about today is going to be crossplay. And I'm sorry, guys. The argument I'm going to make today is that crossplay, it's good business. It's good business. Exclusives are winning at the moment. We can pull up best-selling games of 2018. And I know many of you have probably already done this or heard of this being kind of like quite effective. Wow, is this doing it by the month? Just looked up something that was showing it us by the month. Anyway, so like a yearly thing. If you look at a lot of these different games in the top 10, so I'll show you guys currently what I have here. So in the top 10, we have Far Cry 5. I'm not too surprised by that. So basically, to explain to you, we have 2, as far as I can tell, 3 exclusives on this list, right? Yeah, it looks like 3 exclusives. So we have God of War, we have Mario Kart, and we have MLB The Show. So 3 exclusives. Also, this is not counting last year, which had like Horizon Zero Dawn and a couple other games that were also Sony exclusives. So I bring this up to demonstrate that although the idea of crossplay just seems easy for developers to just let everyone do it. I saw an article on PC Gamer where they were saying, come on guys, it's going to push the market forward if we all like work on the same platform and we all cross platform together, da 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 da. I don't think you can qualify that statement. I don't think that that's a logical statement. Like, sorry, it's a logical statement, but I just don't know how logical. I don't think you can really say that PlayStation or Sony is somehow going to change the way the market works because they decide to work with cross-platform games. I just don't see that being a thing. I really don't see that being a thing. Card in chat says, I said it before and I'll say it again. I pay Sony €150 to be able to play their exclusives on the PC. You do pay them, or you would pay them? Because one thing I will say is, when I talk about cross-platform, I'm typically talking about within consoles, like console wars. PC is kind of like, if you have a PC version of your game, if it's a port, it's probably shit, so we don't care anyway. As PC players, we're kind of ambivalent to a lot of the console wars. But at the same time, there are games, obviously, that haven't come out on PC that have come out on certain platforms like Xbox or on Sony. And those, and as a PC player, we don't have access to those. So, like, if you're coming from a PC kind of perspective, I can kind of understand if they don't want to address that market, or they don't think that they have the technology to do that. That's totally their, I guess, bad, if you will. But in terms of like Xbox versus PlayStation, and people love to bring up the Fortnite thing, right? How PlayStation doesn't allow for Fortnite to be cross-platformed, although Xbox does with PC. I guess I don't really understand where the big hoopla is about this. Like, it seems like it makes pretty like simple sense to me to think that Sony is in their best interest to retain their exclusives, but also retain their, I guess you would kind of say to some extent, their autonomy. They kind of like to operate on their own. And I feel like Sony has always been that way. They kind of like to do their thing off in the corner, like on their own. I realize that games like Fortnite, they're not meant to really be exclusive. So you could argue that with certain games, Sony should allow for cross-platform, which as far as I know, there is at least a few games that they have done cross-platform on before. But there's like some precedent, but it's not really a big thing. But I certainly will say that my main point being that at the end of the day, cross-platform makes pretty good business for Sony. If you look at their best sold games for the past 2 years, I mean, it looks like they're kind of getting at this point, a stranglehold on the exclusive market. I mean, they're crushing Xbox in that regard. I would say Nintendo/Switch is kind of more recently starting to come out with a lot of cool stuff. Like, you're seeing the new Mario Party, the new Smash Brothers games, the new they just had Mario Odyssey. You had Mario Kart, which apparently was still a best-selling game as of a couple months ago. So Nintendo's doing pretty well too, but I think Sony's really reaping in the benefits so far. Chat says, MGP says, Sony doesn't want to do crossplay because Microsoft refused to do it in the past. So you think it's a bit of sour grapes? That would make sense. I would say Nintendo is the one doing their own thing. Switch, Wii's. Yeah, I would agree with that. Nintendo is far less likely to allow like PC platforms or PC ports for sure. But I just say, like, in terms of like Sony versus Microsoft, Sony's kind of always tried to like keep their things separate from like what Microsoft does. I felt like they always were very big in that. I mean, I guess it's kind of a marking of both companies because they're trying to stay apart from each other, even though they're like, you know, inexplicably linked because of their business practices and because they're both, you know, at this point the like biggest platform games. But I don't know, maybe Switch is going to have a big revival, especially because it's promising a lot of big titles in the next year or two. They just announced a bunch of different Final Fantasy remakes and remasters and such. I guess they're more like remasters and remakes. I think the Final Fantasy VII is the only remake that's currently being made for Final Fantasy at the moment. Supa says, Microsoft destroyed its exclusives when it decided to burn all of its studios during the 360 era. So by the time Xbone came out, they had literally nothing but Halo. Yeah, and that wasn't the best Halo either. Anyway, I think I'm done with this segment. I think we can go ahead and move on to the next one, which is going to be MMOs on the go, which is just a 10-minute segment where we talk about a little bit of information, a little bit of news, in the world of MMOs in a condensed format. Okay, let me change the title. Okay, for this week's MMOs on the go, I wanted to talk about one game in particular that I found that I thought was a little bit interesting, but certainly didn't deserve its own current gaming topic because it was kind of like a really short, as far as I could tell, short story. So there's this zombie MMO that I found that's called Dead Frontier 2. Not sure if any of you guys have heard of it, but it's an early access title at the moment, which serves, apparently it says it serves more like an MMO or an MMORPG than it would like an H1Z1 game. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this game, but we can take some time to watch the trailer. It's really, as far as I can tell, it really focuses on horror/survival aspects. And I don't know much about this game, but I do know that it's doing pretty well on Steam in regards to its reviews overall. Okay, this is some scare stuff, but where's the gameplay at? Alright, here's a little bit of gameplay. It basically looks like an over-the-top, an over-the-shoulder, like, typical Resident Evil kind of experience. It just showed us there was some type of progression. That guy was level 20. Whatever that means exactly. Ooh. Just watching that little clip right there, I don't know if you can notice that. To me, it looked like that gun was either really inaccurate or that player was really bad. But that made that scene look really weird. It looks a little janky, like in terms of the way it aims, but honestly I've always felt that way about the survival genre. Like I feel like it's just like marred with ultimate jankness. Anyway, here's the title on Steam. Currently right now it's at a 76%, which for an early access game, I find like that's pretty good. And it's an alpha at the moment according to Germa2 as well. So alpha, I mean, that's pretty impressive for a game to look like that. In alpha and be able to get kind of like 75% out of like 4,450 users. That's pretty good. So I figured I'd mention this one. Apparently right now it's free to play, but it's an early access game. If you're interested in more zombie MMOs, and I know people were kind of really tired of zombie games. I saw that in chat, but I figured I'd mention this one. The next thing that I wanted to mention was for the more hardcore fans who've ever heard of the Mortal Online franchise. Well, apparently, Mortal Online, aka Star Vault, the boy wonder. We say boy wonder because as far as we know, it's like one guy who apparently does pretty well financially. And we think he's the only one that's bankrolling this game, even though Mortal Online hasn't been a success. And never was a success commercially in any way. But Mortal Online is launching its own Battle Royale. And look, I have no clue if this is going to be good or not. Don't take me as like, I guess, advertising this per se. It's just more that I wanted to bring up the conversation of why haven't we seen, first off, more MMORPG type Battle Royales? I'm surprised we haven't. Not that I want them per se, because actually the biggest thing that I like about massive, multiplayer online, like especially RPG games, like MMORPG games, the thing that I like the most is the permanence, right? It's the building your character, it's the having like your mark in the world, and being able to have like maybe player housing or something like that, joining a community. Those are the type of aspects that I really like about MMOs, aspects that aren't really so highlighted these days. But in the case of like Mortal, it didn't even have the best combat system in the first place. In fact, it always had problems with hit detection. And now it's like pivoting to this weird, like, I don't know if this is desperation or he's just, the main developer, as people have always joked, is just some rich guy who just wants to kind of like mess around with things. But at this point, it's just like, why are you still using this outdated Unreal Engine? As far as I know, they haven't upgraded to 4.5 yet, which is the most current one. I don't know. I just feel like there's no way that this could not be a Clown Fiesta. But I figured I'd mention it because I think it's a little bit entertaining. A lot of it comes down to optimization because the Battle Royale genre is winding down. Ashes of Creation has a BR mode too? Oh no. Shroud of the Avatar does too? Oh man. I didn't realize this was already taking over the MMO market. Anyway, so next on the list is going to be some kind of solemn / shouldn't be surprising news. And that's that the last of Arcage's legacy servers are being merged into single servers. And so this is just like the top comment says here, shout out to ThinkTank001 for saying it, but this is normal for the pay-to-win business model. He's totally right. They come out with these progression servers. They come out with these non-pay-to-win servers, which basically still end up being pay-to-win in the case of Arcage. And they're just like, oh, well, I guess it is, to some extent, kind of still pay-to-win. Sorry about that, guys. But they say that after they already monetized their audience as much as they possibly could. This shouldn't be surprising. Look, I know as much as the next guy, I think classic servers or progression servers or like new servers, new fresh start servers, they're cool. They're kind of gimmicky though. Like you have to admit that they're a little bit gimmicky because it's basically like, hey, we screwed up on our like third launch in this case of Arcage. Can we do another one, except this time charge you money for it as well? Or at least, you know, try and see if there's another way we can secure some more whales for our business model? I don't know. I guess Rift did this as well. Rift have the Prime servers. Arcage had its servers. Black Desert, I think... Actually, no, I don't think Black Desert has done the progression or like fresh start servers yet. But at the end of the day, these fresh start servers, despite me not necessarily being against them myself, they are very much gimmicky. And I wanted to bring up the fact that apparently Arcage is losing its like legacy servers. They're being merged into the single servers, because this just proof to you guys that these legacy servers, these progression servers, these whatever the heck fresh start servers you want to call them, they're just a gimmick. Like, they're gonna merge them, guys. Like, they're gonna merge those servers back into the regular servers after you get bored of them. And then it's like, what are they going to do? Sell you another one? Sell you another fresh start server where you can start over again and hopefully spend more money doing the same grind that you've already done, especially the gear grind in the case of these like more like Asian MMOs like Arcage or Black Desert. It's just, this is marketing, guys. Can we stop falling for this? I mean, look, I'll be right there with you guys, right? I'll stop doing it as well. I haven't done one in quite some time, but I wasn't against them when I used to play on them. But let's just stop as a collective, like giving these companies money when they mess up a game for the third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. I mean, look at everybody's favorite Bless Online. Like, why was there even that much drama about how shit that game was? Yes, there should be drama. Yes, we should automatically, as a community, be able to band together and say, this is wrong, you should not do this. But where was all of that before? Like, when we already knew that they launched the game like 4 to 5 different times and failed at it. Right? Like, when they promised all of this stuff, then said, JK, we're doing early access. So that was their reasoning for not having to do the promised things. I just think these early access servers, these progression servers, all of these different types of servers, they're just gimmicky. They're just, at this point, marketing tactics. They're just more ways for us to get our money taken from us. And I mean, I should specify giving our money to somebody who's taking it, because at the end of the day, they're not taking it from you. People are willingly falling into these traps of these servers. And I feel like at this point, we should just snap out of it as a community. We shouldn't let them get away with these kinds of servers anymore. And yes, classic servers, I realize, are a little bit different. I'm not talking about classic servers per se. In fact, I think a classic server, especially in the case of WoW, which is a game that's just changed so drastically since it launched and has had like, 9 or 10 expansions at this point. Classic servers in that case make a lot of sense. But in the case of like Arcage, it's like, Arcage, you don't have that much content. Calm down, buddy. You're just trying to get people to spend more money on your same repetitive gameplay feedback loop that has made you guys a lot of money, but is pretty messed up morally. Anyway, I'm done with this section. I'd like to move to the pitch your game section. And I think that we have a winner to announce. So let me go ahead and play my little graphic. Okay, let's change my title track. We're doing this on the go. That's how we do it. Okay, so last week's winner. If you guys remember, last week's theme was psychological thrillers. And every week we're going to have a new theme. And then every week we're going to choose the winner. And so we didn't have a lot of entries. I had like 3 entries. So can we get some more entries, guys? Last week was psychological thrillers. That ain't too difficult. And if you remember, in regards to the in regards to the pitcher game, the winner is going to win something. For this week, or for last week, it was going to be a mug. And so I get to announce that the winner is Feline Knave. And I will read Feline Knave's pitch live. Let's go ahead and read it. Let me remember where it is. Okay, so psychological thriller. Here is Feline Knave's idea. The player is a patient in a mental health asylum in a world ruled over by psionic elite. They are given a series of mundane tasks to perform throughout the building. Effectiveness in these tasks grant greater privileges and access to tools. As they undertake these tasks, they learn more about the world around them via environmental storytelling, conversations, eavesdropping, and participated in visions of dubious origin. It's up to the player to decide whether or not they're being told the truth and their condition is real. Or if the rulers have some sort of sinister agenda and they just want to imprison people in the clinic. And so you need to, basically it's kind of like this mindfuck of a situation. You think that you're like mentally ill in his idea, and you're starting to kind of figure out, are you actually mentally ill? It's kind of like Shutter Island to some extent. Are you mentally ill? Or are these people like subjecting you to some type of like chemical thing? Or are they just taking advantage and messing with your perception? That's perfect for a psychological thriller. It's really like the idea of you're not sure, but you're in this eerie place that doesn't have a lot of like visceral action. It's more like about being creepy. It's more about setting the tone, having lore, having story. I thought it was a really good idea. He then goes on to say, or she, I'm not sure if this person's a he or she. I shouldn't assume your gender, but the player is told that they have been placed in the clinic due to a dangerous mental condition leading to hallucinations. And there's a perfect place for gameplay opportunity. That's why I think the psychological thriller is so interesting, because you can make that part of the game. And apparently the proposed name for this game was Headspace. So I have to give Feline Knave the win. You're going to get the mug. And we can go ahead and talk about what the next week, our next week topic is going to be, this week's topic. And I think it's going to be, let me get some water first. I think that this week, remember last week we talked about the new Lord of the Rings MMO, and obviously we have no information about that. So why not use this as an opportunity to speculate a bunch? And so this week's Pitch Your Game is going to be the new Lord of the Rings MMO. I want you guys to pitch me an MMO in less than like 250 to 300 words, okay? Like, I don't want to be like crazy strict about how many words it is, but I don't want you guys sending me essays or sending me game documents, because I'm not going to be your publisher anyway, even if it was a great idea. But I don't have the time to read through documents and documents. That's basically what I do for a living now. Just read a bunch of documents and try and like extrapolate the data from it and tell you guys a story. But yeah, this week is going to be, what should the new Lord of the Rings MMORPG be, right? That's my question to you guys. What should it be? And I know that's a quite general question, but it's totally up to you. Do you want to make a theme park? Do you want to make a sandbox? Do you want to make it emergent gameplay? Do you want to make it PvP? Do you want to make it PvE? Do you want to make it story-based? Whatever you want to make it, the winning bet or the winning pitch is going to win. I'm not 100% sure yet. I know I should probably have figured this out. That would have been professional. But I was either thinking it could be for this week, it could be a free sub to the channel, or I can possibly let you guys know what the next videos I'm going to work on is. Something like that. We'll figure it out. It could, like, I don't want to do a mug every week, because I feel like people will just get tired of doing it, and I don't want to do a shirt every week. So I don't know. Maybe we could do a shirt this week. Or whoever the winner is can just tell me whatever they're interested in. Do they want a shirt? Do they want a mug? Or do they want a free sub? Whatever they want, they can just let me know. But yeah, that's too much time spent on this segment. Let's go ahead and get to the next segment, which is From the Vault, the classic segment where we talk about nostalgia, we talk about old things, and it's really just it's my opportunity to talk about old games that I feel like everyone's either forgotten about or we don't talk about enough. That reminds me, for the people who listen to me just with the audio track, you have to remember I also do a video portion that's streamed and then uploaded to YouTube. So You're not going to see all of my beautiful transitions, but you'll be able to hear my voice, hopefully. So this week's From the Vault section is on Chronicles of Spellborn. And I've chosen Chronicles of Spellborn because, surprise, I'm covering it on this week's Death of a Game. So for people who know nothing about Chronicles of Spellborn, which should be the majority of you, it's a game that used Jesper Kyd as the composer, which I'm playing that song right now. And it's really, I would say, the first attempt we've ever had, like first major attempt that we've ever had on an action combat system. Right when I say that, this dude just goes barreling off the mountain and dies. Welcome to MMO Hut, where only the top players are playing. Just kidding, guys. MMO Hut used to be the shit. I don't know whatever happened to them. So Chronicles of Spellborn, if you notice, you basically had to look at your target in order to do damage to your target. Let me turn on the music just slightly. So if you noticed, you had to lock onto your target with your actual aim. So there's no tab targeting, there's nothing of the sort, right? It's really about trying to keep your target in your line of sight. And then if you notice at the middle of the screen, there is a rotating combat bar. This is probably the aspect of the game that I didn't necessarily like, but I understood what they were going for. It's basically some rudimentary combo system. But if you notice how whenever he looks at the target, his targeting reticle turns red, but otherwise it doesn't. And so basically, this was kind of like what the first action, MMO combat looked like. It was just looking at your target, and as you could see, that's what would target, in this case, the boar. You had to look at the target, and then click your abilities while keeping that locked in. It's a little bit kind of janky, and you can kind of see to some extent it has a lot of trappings of typical tab target games. I mean, it has this big targeting reticle. It allows you to kind of like softly aim. It's more of like a soft hitbox, aka it's not like pixel perfect or anything of the sort. It's not physics based. But I mean, you could see even in this rudimentary system, which used the Unreal Engine 2.5, which Vanguard used, and so did what else did Lineage 2 did. It's pretty active looking, right? Like I think it's pretty exciting to look at these old MMOs. And this game came out, if I remember correctly, and this is bad that I don't remember because I already completed the script. But I think it's 2008. Well, you guys will see why I'm confused as to when it launched as soon as the video comes out, which, by the way, should be coming out tomorrow. The next Death of a Game is on Chronicles of Spellborn. I thought it'd be fun to talk a little bit about it on the podcast to let you guys know that this is actually the next video that we have planned. But as you can see, it's pretty interesting looking. It almost looks like Fable to some extent. They call this European fantasy. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Again, this section is just a little section just to talk about classic things. Next week, I'm going to try and dig really deep into the vault, see if we can't find something really juicy. But let's go ahead and move to our next segment, which is one of my favorite segments, and that's the soapbox segment. That's where I get up on my soapbox and I just complain or talk or rant about whatever topics have entered my mind for the week, or maybe even for the day. Okay, let's change my title track. Someone in chat asked, did you ever play Asheron's Call? No, I did not. But I'm very, very familiar. So actually, this is funny enough that we're starting the soapbox segment at this point. But the funny thing is let's talk about my videos. Let's talk about a couple juicy topics. And funny enough, this is all related to each other. Okay, let's talk about the YouTube space of video game analysis or video game journalism, whatever you want to call it. I would probably say those are the two most common words. Let's talk about video game journalism on YouTube or video game analysis. It's the coolest thing about YouTube is that it's this open platform where anybody can join, anybody can make a video, anybody can respond. It's just totally interactive, right? If someone disagrees with you, they can make a video response that can be linked like it used to be. Like you could have, do you guys remember that back on YouTube? You could have like video responses or whatever, and it was always like some random like 5-view video that you would like make a response video to some like really popular video. But anyway, YouTube used to be about that. It used to be about video responses. It used to be about like community feedback, community interaction. I know YouTube has kind of lost a lot of its community feel in some ways because of a lot of the restrictions that it's been introducing. But I wanted to talk about game analysis and gaming journalism on YouTube, because ultimately, although it's so cool that it's this free, open platform where we can talk about just about anything, where we can, share all of these different stories, what kind of ends up happening is there's really no fact checking on YouTube, right? There's really no integrity that has to be upheld. And I think that this is a big problem, because anybody can make a video and basically kind of act like I guess I would refer to an expert or a pseudo expert to some extent. They can say that I'm the best at this certain thing and make a video on it and be pretty convincing. That's the scary thing, is you can actually convince people of such things. If you speak well enough, or you sound like you're educated enough, you can usually convince people that you know far more than you actually know. Excuse me. And the problem with this is that in the case of video games, let's be honest, many of us that comment and do journalism and do these video game essays and long form essays, whatever you would like to call them, I know there's a plethora of different ways to call them, none of us really have any formal education. And the big reason for that is that, we have formal education, but not formal education in journalism, because there isn't video game journalism as a degree. It doesn't exist. Journalism hasn't really gotten big in video games yet to where it's like a career path that people can really go after. And I know, as someone who's always been interested in it, there's no career path. There's no video game journalism school. It's kind of, you just learn on the go as you go. And it's a thing that, I totally agree. In chat, they're saying that it's been around since the 90s. It's been around for a long time, but the thing about journalism is, as YouTube has evolved as a media, we have better editing now, we have a lot more information, we're in the age of information. It's so easy to make snap judgments, and that's kind of where the ethics of a person, for example, in journalism, is so important. And I talk about this on my stream, and that's what I'm going to talk about today on my soapbox. I'm on my soapbox here, and I'm looking at you guys, and today I'm going to complain about the fact that because YouTube is this great open platform, unfortunately, it means that there's a lot of people who are making videos about games who don't even play the games, don't know anything about the games, and are basically just following what I would like to call public opinion. And now look, for people who are aware of other types of journalism, this is not strange at all. There are many, many, many types of journalism and many different genres and I guess I would say topics where people kind of make a website or make a career out of just saying the general opinion, right? This has been around for a long time. Politicians do this to some extent, right? A politician is going to have its talking points, right? It's going to say what it's supposed to say to some extent. And unfortunately, there are a lot of YouTubers who are kind of doing this as well. And I take issue with this because ultimately I will get compared to other people, right? And in the case of today, the topic of the person in particular, or actually I should say people in particular that I wanted to talk about, was this whole drama around Downward Thrust and around Clean Prince Gaming. And there's been a lot of drama about these two. And the main drama has been kind of structured around the fact that these two people are reactionaries. They're not really gamers per se. People's claims are that they're not actually gamers. They're not actually playing these games. They're just kind of talking about them. And so I thought that this would be a great opportunity for me to talk about this as a whole, but also talk about my own kind of philosophy. And so if people aren't aware, in particular, Clean Prince Gaming made a couple of videos about Division. He used the same gameplay in two different videos. In one video, he said the game was shit and dying and failed. In the other video, he said the game has come back or whatever, right? So basically, that's the definition of what you would call a reactionary video. He made a reaction based on something that happened, followed by another reaction based on Division doing well again, numbers-wise. So to explain it to you guys, he's following a trend, right? This is not uncommon at all. I'm not shocked by this. Many people do this. In fact, on YouTube, trend following is the best way to make money. Constantly talking about trending topics, constantly being the general opinion guy. And what I mean by general opinion guy is I mean here's a good example. Microtransactions. Am I right, guys? They suck, right? Some people would say that's virtue signaling. And it basically is. It's just following the public opinion. The public opinion is always going to be like, microtransactions are bad, EA is bad. It's always the publisher's fault, right? If I only made videos based on public opinion, my videos wouldn't look anything like they currently look. Because ultimately, people are memeing in chat. You guys are going to make me laugh. The people on the stream who are listening to audio only can't hear the memes, okay? That's why I need to get you guys in actual Discords with me. Anyway. Yeah, apparently none of you guys are coming into the podcast lobby today. I need to explain the podcast lobby to you guys. We have a little lobby where you can come in and you'll be basically queued up to where you can ask me a question at the end of the podcast during the call-in segment. So if any of you guys want to ask me a question, please join the podcast lobby. You can ask me a question there, or you can ask me in Discord just text-wise. I get it if you don't want to use your voice. So please, the best place to ask questions is going to be in Discord, but you can ask them in Twitch. Anyway, to continue what I was saying. So that basically the big drama around it is Clean Prince Gaming has made a couple videos where he's kind of made what I would like to say contradictory responses, right? He's kind of gone against certain things that he said, but it wasn't just that. It's not just being a hypocrite to some extent that people are having issue with. It's also the fact that they're starting to realize that, and I don't know why it took them however many videos he has at this point. He has like almost 400,000 subs or 500,000 subs. But I don't know why it took the audience so long to realize that he hasn't been offering anything of substance. And again, this is my opinion. You're more than willing to disprove me or disagree with me. In fact, if you want to disagree with me, I would very much be interested in hearing your opinion. But I've actually taken a lot of time to look at different people within the video game sphere, especially in regards to journalism, because I take my craft, my job at this point, which is doing what I'm doing now, I take it very seriously. And so I love watching YouTube videos. I love watching other people. I love, for example, I grew up watching Zero Punctuation. I grew up watching Total Biscuit, rest in peace. I grew up watching a lot of, I guess what you would like to call the classics of the video game world. But now we kind of have some new dogs. We have like Reykjavik, we have Joseph Anderson, we have Super Bunny Hop. We have what's the other guy's name? I always forget his name. Reykjavik and Mark Brown. We Game Developers Toolkit or Boss Keys. He's known for Boss Keys. We have a lot of really cool, informative YouTube channels that basically do gaming journalism. Sterling would kind of be, to me, Jim Sterling would be kind of a bit more like a pundit to me, which is a little bit different. The guys I just mentioned are kind of more interested in just like the mechanics of the games themselves. They're not like so focused on the politics around it, which is kind of where so to me, Jim Sterling is basically more of kind of like, you guys ever watch a radio show or hop on ESPN and you have like Stephen Smith or something like that, like the person who's just like talking about a bunch of different topics. That's basically what Jim Sterling does to some extent. But anyway, point being, people within this space exist that do their craft and have been doing it for a while and do it, in my opinion, in a very effective way. And the reason why I bring up these examples is I've studied these people, right? I understand that Jim Sterling, he's playing a character, right? So the way he communicates and the way he acts, he's just playing his character. But he's not doing it necessarily with any ill will or ill intention. But inherently, he's going to be a little bit reactionary. Now, the problem, the reason why there was so much drama around Downward Thrust and Clean Prince Gaming is, for the longest time, they self-described their videos as essays, as long-form analysis, as analysis period, right? This is what they would describe their videos as. But as I've mentioned ad nauseum on my Twitch channel, when I hardly ever do stream, calling your piece of work analysis basically is opening it up to far more scrutiny than it should normally have. And what I mean by that is that if I call something a first impression, Lazy Peon is a perfect example of this. Lazy Peon makes first impressions videos. Now, he makes first impressions videos in the MMO space because ultimately it's hard to make a review in the MMORPG world because, as you guys know, that would take like hundreds of hours to prepare. It's not economically feasible, but it's also not time efficient. So most people will make kind of what's called like first impressions to some extent. And people who do reviews like IGN and Polygon and these other websites, Destructoid, who make reviews on MMOs, they're basically first impressions. So point being, people like Lazy Peon make a first impressions video, and it's basically that. It's based on his, first impressions. And so he can't refer to it as a review, and you can't have the same level of scrutiny that a review would have, right? A review you would have, like someone who beat the game can review the game, right? But somebody who hasn't really beat the game, most people are probably going to argue that he shouldn't review the game, right? But that person could make a first impressions. Now, the problem with Clean Prince Gaming is that he wasn't making first impressions. He was actually making videos that are very, very, what I like to say, or would describe as like divisive, or making very bold claims. Like, say, for example, when you say a game is dying or is dead, and again, this is where I fit into, this is why I brought this topic up, this is where I fit into this whole thing. It takes a lot to make that claim. And there's a reason why in my Death of a Game series, first and foremost, my series has never, ever been about being a negative Nancy or just capitalizing on negativity. It's never been about that. The name itself actually is just poetic. Like, I came up with the name as a diction. It's the subjective, term. It's the subjective phrase of the death of something. Right? The death of a salesman is kind of where I got it from, funny enough, if you guys know that famous play / movie. But Death of a Salesman is kind of where I got it, and if you guys remember watching it, he does die in the movie, sorry, spoiler, but it's far different because it's more about this, like, journey about him getting to the point of, like, death, right? It's the metaphorical kind of story of this guy going through death. Anyway, so my point of the series has never been about just wanting things to be about talking about negativity or everything should die or these games failed or these games got murdered or whatever. And just the name of his series alone, Clean Prince Gaming's a series, this game wasn't just killed, it was murdered. This game didn't just die, it was murdered. Isn't that what it's called? This game didn't just die, it was murdered. Well, first off, no developer intentionally murders their game, right? Like, I know everyone in Unison's going to say, but what about City of Heroes? I know, like, City of Heroes kind of, like, purposely killed their game, right? NCSoft specifically. But besides those little, caveats or exceptions, no developer is going to actually want to kill their game, right? And so it's so strange to say that, like, they murdered the game. It's like, they're not intentionally trying to. It'd be more, if you wanted to be more like specific, it'd be like involuntary manslaughter, if we're going to use the law terms, which I know is very detective-like that I even know the difference between those. But I do like reading crime novels. But it's different, right? It's like, it's more like involuntary manslaughter. You're not trying to kill it. So even the name, like the premise, is a little bit cheesy to me. But just so you guys know, he started his series after I started my series. That's the thing. Nobody acknowledges that, unfortunately. Not that probably any of you guys care, but I would say like the general audience who would know him and then see my content would probably think, oh, he's the more popular guy, therefore he was doing it longer. Actually, I had started it before he did. So it's the point of the Death of a Game series, first and foremost, is about highlighting the stories behind these games. That's the most important thing. Right? Highlighting the story behind, in the case of this week's Death of a Game that's yet to come out, the Chronicles of Spellborn, this MMO that's basically, I would say, gonna fall to the wayside. We're not really gonna remember it unless we take some time to try and remember it. But it didn't have a big enough audience. It didn't have a big enough hoopla. It didn't sell enough copies. It wasn't big, mainstream wise. But I'm gonna tell the story about Chronicles of Spellborn because the story itself is far more interesting, right? Than its level of popularity, or maybe the game was itself, like commercially. But the Death of a Game series is about highlighting games, right? It's about highlighting a game that, in the case of Chronicles of Spellborn, was essentially the first time that we've ever attempted as a genre to make an action combat MMORPG system, and that means something to me. That should mean something to everybody. You might not have to care about the game, but the historical context should still mean something. So point being is like, it's a lot of effort. I put a lot of effort into telling the story, talking about the positives of games and not just the negatives. When I've watched Clean Prince Gaming on multiple occasions, and again, I only bring him up because I want to show people what the difference is between my content and that kind of content. But if you watch one of his videos, not only does he not make or not only does he hardly, if ever, present any actual evidence. I mean, from the developers, statistical numbers, commercial numbers. I mean, popularity numbers. Like, basically little to no statistics. And it's just kind of based on like hearsay of public opinion. Like, for example, we know that Star Wars Battlefront 2 didn't do well, right? We know that. Like, just objectively as like an audience, we know that. And so I'm not saying you have to watch them. Sorry, guys. But point being is that if you like just knowing about Star Wars Battlefront, like let's say you've never played Star Wars Battlefront, you already know it's not so great of a game. And so basically when you watch a video like Clean Prince Gaming, it's going to be like, hey guys, it was pay to win and a shit game. And that's like the analysis. And I'm being serious. Again, feel free to disprove what I'm saying. Feel free to go watch his videos and deeply analyze them, as I've done, and see if you can get any more analysis. Because that's the analysis. And so after all of this drama, Clean Prince took off analysis. He took off the word analysis. There's no more analysis now. You don't see the word analysis anymore anywhere, like on his channel. In fact, I saw him on Twitter refer to his videos as pop culture essays. So again, he's found a way to change the goalpost from game analysis, game journalist, impressions, reactions. What does he call it now? Pop culture essay. And so I bring this up because I want you guys to understand the only person who can hold people accountable, and I mean me too, the only person who can hold me accountable, hold Clean Prince Gaming, I almost called him Chris Prince Gaming, Clean Prince Gaming, Downward Thrust, any of the other YouTubers you hate, insert reactionary guy, the only person who can hold them accountable is you. You're the only person who can hold us accountable. YouTube won't. YouTube's not going to remove a video because it's false. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the thing about YouTube, the saddest thing about this whole thing, and the reason why I really wanted to bring it up, is I'm going to demonstrate something to you guys that is going to, in the case of some people, they're going to think it's like me being jealous or angry or whatever else. But there is a very clear point behind what I'm about to show you guys. So, Clean Prince, again, you can go watch this on YouTube. There's tons of videos that are talking about this. Just type in Clean Prince Gaming drama. There's a bunch of videos that are breaking down the drama. I'm not really going to explain the whole drama because that's not really what this podcast is about. And it's, to be honest, I don't give a shit. But after all of this, he started losing subs in droves. I mean, this is a serious issue. I'm not inventing this stuff. He was losing constant subs, right? People were posting all over his videos. You don't even play the games. This is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And Instaximus has already let the cat out of the bag in chat. But the sad truth is, guys, he still almost broke 4 million views for the month. You know how much money that is? That's 10 grand, my dudes. He's made at least 10 grand for being wrong and making bad videos. And when I say bad, I don't mean opinion. I mean like poorly constructed in terms of like, they don't offer any actual analysis. They don't offer any like objective points that can be proven and can't be disputed, right? Like, for example, when I said that Star Wars The Old Republic was a failure because it lost 90% of its subscription base, that's a fact. You can't disprove that. You could argue, well, it's still technically alive, but you can't disprove the fact because the statistics don't lie, right? That's why I designed my series the way it is, because I didn't want... When I made my series, I didn't want people to be able to just say, you know what? I disagree. I didn't want that to be an option. And that might sound crazy because it's literally impossible. People will always just agree or disagree off the bat without even necessarily listening to your criticisms. But I didn't want people to be able to open my video and say, oh, Star Wars Galaxies didn't die this way. I disagree. I wanted them to have to go point by point by point. You got to disprove this point. When Raph Koster says it dies because of this, you got to disprove the developer saying it. Not just me. You got to disprove the statistics, right? And so it's more about evidence. But this shit drives me fucking insane because this guy still made 10 grand off of making poor videos. And this, again, I bring this up not to be jealous. It's nothing about that. It's about, on YouTube, controversy sells. That's just the fact, guys. The fact of the matter is, if you are wrong objectively, it doesn't really matter in the court of opinion, right? Not these days. You could be wrong and still have 4 million views. You could be wrong and still have 530,000 subscribers. And again, I don't think that he started this way. I think he's a smart guy who learned to be this way. And what I mean by that is that he might have initially been like, you know what? I'm really here to like tell stories and talk about games and stuff. That's probably how his channel started. That's, again, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to assume that he had any nefarious like belief or whatever else. But what I will say is that what he quickly realized is even when he's objectively wrong, he still makes money. And that's the problem with YouTube, is that even if you're just straight wrong, and I mean like you cannot, you know, there's no possible way you could argue that you are right in a scenario. You're just like, let's say you have a pie on your face and you're sitting right next to a half-eaten pie, and the YouTube audience comes up to you and says, well, you keep saying that you didn't eat that pie. We see pie all over your face. The guy who ate the pie can just say, well, YouTube's still going to pay me. And it's true. Like, it doesn't matter. And so I say this all to let you guys know that at the end of the day, you, the community, are the only person who can police what is good criticism and what is bad criticism. And I ask you on any of my videos, on anybody's videos, to know what the differences are between impressions, analysis, a review, etc. Like, what is a long-form essay? What qualifies as one? What qualifies as a first impression? And scrutinize them under the varying levels of scrutiny that they deserve. That's basically my big point. One other thing I wanted to comment on is a couple people told me that I've heard this before, and I've heard people mention this of Clean Prince Gaming. They say, oh, he doesn't even play the games he talks about. Just so you guys know, some of the games that I've covered, I haven't played as extensively as I have played other games. I can show you an easy example of this on my channel. I don't know why I didn't go big face. All right, I'm going to keep going. Apparently, I'm a little bit going past time, but I think none of you guys are complaining, right? I can keep talking. I can keep ranting. We have a new podcast moderator who's kind of trying to keep me honest so I don't go over topics too much. That's Doom Black Dragon. So please thank him for helping with the podcast first and foremost. But all right, I'm gonna go over all of my videos. Oh, well, not bit by bit, but you guys get my point. I'm gonna go over a couple of my videos in which I can tell you straight up that I didn't play as extensively as I did other videos, other games. The first ones, I pretty much played these all quite extensively, except for Tabula Rasa and Hellgate London. Now, Hellgate London is a bit of an anomaly because I played it a lot after the fact, so I actually take that one off. But I'll use Tabula Rasa as my example. In the case of Tabula Rasa, I can't really play the game anymore, right? They have this, I guess you would call like a reborn server of sorts, but it's not really a reborn server, or like a remake, or what I think it's called, Tabula Rasa Reborn or something like that. It's one of those private servers. It's not really ready yet, right? So there's no conceivable way that I could play Tabula Rasa right now, as it stands, right? However, there's still a story behind Tabula Rasa that's interesting to tell. I mean, shit, I had a video that lasted 1 hour. Clearly, there was enough in the video or in the story that I thought interesting to tell people. My point being is that I can't play Tabula Rasa, and I never will be able to. But I still can report on it, and I still can have the care, I would say the care, the forethought, the context, and learn the context of what the game stood for, what its faults were, what its positives were. And the way that I can determine all of this is by a lot of research, right? So I've talked about this before, and at some point, once I get enough, not shout out to Patreon, but once I get enough Patreon donations up to $500 a month, we're going to do the making of Death of a Game, and we're going to painstakingly explain to everybody how the process of making a Death of a Game works, so you guys will understand the amount of effort I put into these things and why I can't put more than 2 of them out in a month. It's just really inconceivable, especially if I want to make any other kind of content. It just becomes impossible. The point being that in the case of Tabula Rasa, right, I can read reviews, I can read critic reviews, I can read player reviews, I can read player testimonials, I can read Reddit, I can read forums, I can read other videos people have done on the game. I can watch gameplay. I can study gameplay. I can analyze gameplay. And when I say analyze, again, you have to explain what that means. That means taking the time to see what is unique about this game versus these other games. What features did this game uniquely present? Which features did this game say it was this like hallmark? For example, in the case of Tabula Rasa, I can still remember what those are despite never playing the game. And those things were, for example, PvE. PvE was very dynamic. You could have PvE camps overrun NPC camps. And so what the players had to do is retake those camps, and those camps would become cities or become little villages or whatever else. Point being, if you guys can't understand at this point, I feel like I'm going over a little bit too much on the point, but the point mainly being that in some cases of some games, I can't play them, right? There's just no conceivable way that I can play them. Matrix Online was another example of that. I couldn't play the game. There's no way I'm going to be able to play the game. What's another one that I've had that I didn't play? I don't have a whole lot of ones that I didn't play, I guess, now that I look at... Oh, Paragon. Paragon is one. No, actually, I take that back. I played a little bit of Paragon, but not a lot. Age of Empires Online. And... Nosgoth as well. So there's been games on my channel that I haven't like played, but there's pretty much always a reason for that. There's either I can't currently play them, or I don't think playing them for like 60, 70, 100 hours or whatever is feasible, or is really necessarily needed. And in the case of like an Age of Empires Online, I've played Age of Empires, you know, a lot. I mean, dozens and dozens of hours. Age of Mythology was my favorite one. I was a huge fan of the series, so I don't need to play Age of Empires Online ad nauseum to understand what they're trying to do, right? In the case of Nosgoth, I wish I could have played the game. I would have been able to talk more about gameplay aspects in my video. But, I mean, ultimately, you can only report on what you know. And so I bring this up as an example of kind of like, in some cases, a journalist can't always do what they report on. For example, people that report on the NBA, people that report on fighting, people that report on certain sports, they can't always play them at a super high level themselves, but they can still take the time and effort to make sure that they're properly explaining or understanding the historical context. And what I mean by that is that if I were to go play let's say I can play Tabula Rasa right now. If I were to go play it right now and use my current mind of all the things that I've learned about MMOs and whatever else, it reminds me of that, what's that meme where like all like the little like math equations are popping up in the head, except that's like me with like leveling characters and massive multiplayer online games. But anyway, if I could play Tabula Rasa right now, I can't look at it with the same lens, right? I have to take my lens from 2007, 2004, 2005, right? And try and really understand what the game meant at that time. And that's the difficult part of the series, is trying to put yourself back into 2005, 2004, 2003, and remember why this game was so significant. And that's pretty much my whole soapbox topic at this point. I think we just went over about 8 minutes or so. So it's time to move on to the call-in section. And the call-in section is where we talk about hot takes. We take questions. It's like the AMA section. We can take any questions. You're allowed to talk to me on Discord, aka call in if you would like. And we can talk about any of the stuff that we've talked about today. Black Desert Online. We could talk about the unannounced Blizzard project, the Belgian government deciding to investigate EA. We can talk about my crossplay points that I've made, Dead Frontier, any of that stuff. You could talk about, maybe you could pitch me your MMORPG idea for the new Lord of the Rings game. And you can talk about this drama we just talked about in terms of the soapbox section, which I know I never like talk about drama, but I really felt I had to because it was late at night, okay? And someone disagreed with me on the internet. That's kind of the story. But the story was that I was on Reddit really late at night, and I saw somebody put these games weren't just didn't just die, they were murdered. And somebody posted a screenshot of my video, or of my videos. I'm not gonna lie, I hardly ever get triggered, but that got me, you motherfucker. Whoever that was, you got me, dude. You definitely got me rustled. I was big time rustled there. No tears, only dreams now. Okay, let me go ahead and do the next transition. Okay, let's change my title track to our final forum, the call-in section. Okay, again, anybody's welcome to ask a question. You will then be moved into the channel, and you will be allowed to, talk about whatever you want to talk about. I wanted to add a lot more audience interaction because, first off, the cool thing about this is we're in the age of the internet. We're in the age of Discord and these really cool features that you can implement these days, where we've never been closer as a community than like at this point. And I know a lot of MMOs don't really have the whole community aspects, but I'm just talking about like as a channel, we can do so much. We can meet up at events. We can talk to each other on Discord. We can talk to each other on podcasts. We can talk about whatever. Like, it's crazy to me, like in this day and age, man, like the amount of accessibility that I can have with my audience is just like crazy. It doesn't happen. Like when I was young, I was very much a loner. There was no way in hell you would ever see me like hanging out in a big group or having like a 600 person Discord or whatever the size of our Discord is at this point. I was never really that kind of person. But I kind of built this thing and realized, like, I need to, like, do something with this. And building an audience, I think, is a big part of that. Okay, I'm ready for our first victim. Apparently, we have our first victim on a call-in. I do have a question in chat I want to get to. It's, what's your take on South Korea? Oh, okay. I'll just wait. Hey, what's up, RC Win?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. To be honest, I have played Black Desert, and I kind of like had a short time with it. Like I try to play it with friends and stuff, and every time I try to play with friends, like they were talking about how they didn't like it for some reason. I was like, I always wanted to try and play with it, and and I was like, oh, we should just wait and keep going, but they just couldn't get into it because they figured out that it was like too much grinding, and I guess they just didn't feel like that Black Desert was worth getting into, even when it was only $10. So, yeah, I don't.
Okay, yeah. So your point is kind of like the grindiness of the game was always off-putting to people.
Yeah, any newcomers try to come into the Black Desert.
Okay. Oh, so that's kind of letting like the newcomers know. Yeah, I mean at this point it's kind of radioactive. Like I don't even know if I'd suggest the game to anybody because of all this like kind of pay to win stuff. But it sucks because there's not a whole lot of MMOs to play right now, especially like action combat ones. And people always ask all the time, BDO, do you like Black Desert? Do you like Black Desert? And I don't know, I'm kind of with you. I think the gameplay loops are really repetitive. And especially with all these like bad business practices, there's just really no like conceivable way I would want to play the game. But yeah, thanks for your point. It kind of wasn't really a question; it was more like a comment. But I appreciate it.
I was trying to figure out a question, but
it's cool, dude. Thanks for coming on. You were our first guest. Okay, let me get to this one in chat really quickly. What's your take on South Korea trying to pass a law to make sexual harassment in video games to be punishable with prison time? I mean, there's no conceivable way that they could enforce that. That's the thing, MGPT. There's no way that they can enforce that. You guys won't believe me, but I have actually been to a couple different panels about sexual harassment in regards to video games. I've gone to a couple conventions and we'll sit through these panels and I'll kind of listen to people's points and hear the stories about people talking about their harassment. And first off, it's horrifying the stuff that people have gone through online. And I've personally gone through some weird stuff myself. But ultimately, in this like age of the internet, age of anonymity, like it's so hard to penalize or go against people whenever they say or do terrible things or act like terrible people. It's just really difficult. In the old days, we had like voice chat. Everybody was forced into voice chat, especially on like when you played like Halo and stuff. And so the way we would police each other is just by talking shit. I mean, like if someone said some bad shit, other people would be like, "Hey, dude, screw you. Like you suck, dude. You're trash." Like it was kind of like we as a community were collectively toxic. But it worked, right? Because we also were willing to have conversations and laugh and meet random people online and stuff. And that's kind of like changed in a lot of ways like these days. It's a lot more anonymous. People can name themselves, have a completely different avatar, say bad things. But ultimately, although I think that there are harassment problems, and I hate the problems that anonymity creates, unfortunately, I just think that it's just way too hard to enforce such a law. Like, I just don't see how it'd be conceivable. But anyway, I'm ready for the next person. €10 is not that much if you like PvP, even if you have to grind a lot. Yeah, but PvP is going to be directly contributed to the pay to win grind, unfortunately, because a lot of the PvPers are going to need a lot more items from the cash shop in order to perform, like the ghillie suit, for example, in Black Desert Online. Hey, what's up, Mini Van Helsing? Do you have a question? I don't know if this guy went AFK. I'll get to somebody else, but you can feel free to interrupt me if you're not here, or if you do end up coming back. But Card says, I've always been fine. Oh, there he is. Hey, what's up?
Hello? Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, I was muted, so I actually couldn't respond to you.
Oh, okay, so you were talking.
Yeah, I was just muted and I couldn't unmute from my end. Right, so the question I had for you, and this is a bit more related to the MMO genre as a whole. I've been playing WoW for World of Warcraft for a very long time, and I feel it's been going very downhill recently. I don't know how long you've spent in Battle for Azeroth, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on how BFA is doing right now, and how there's not really any other MMO out there that has, I guess, the company size and the longevity to compete with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so actually this is a good topic. I did tell people that I did actually pre-order and play BFA at launch, but I can tell you guys now the complete story, which is that I got to like level 116 or so, and I just quit. I just to be completely honest, besides my normal issues with WoW, which my normal issues at this point are going to be that it's kind of samey. It's quite monochromatic in a lot of ways. I thought the areas within BFA were incredible. I thought a lot of the cinematics were awesome, but it's so vapid, unfortunately, because of the difficulty levels are so easy. The content's so easy that to me it makes it like when you go to this like the cannibals, like where you're at the Blood Elf area where they eat other elves and stuff like that. Remember like the crazy cannibals? Yeah, like that part was so cool. Like I love the way the zone looked and everything. I think all of us can agree that the BFA zones look awesome. And a lot of the new like stuff that they've introduced, like cinematics and graphics and art, I think it's been largely positive. But for me, it's kind of like you're adding all of these nice bells and whistles to kind of like an empty shell at this point. And what I mean by that is that I feel like in order for that type of expansion to truly work, I feel like it works better in the classic realm of WoW. In my opinion, I feel like if you take classic WoW and you give it the BFA expansion, it's much better because first off, PvP, you don't have to incentivize people with like shitty randomized rewards, which by the way, that's a big problem I have with BFA is the whole randomized rewards. Why did they make it to where PvP gear is basically completely random? Like I don't understand. Like everyone was against that. The community as a whole all railed against this. And yet the developers kind of just kept doing it and like ignored our concerns. And yeah, anyway, so I definitely think that BFA has slowed down tremendously, and that's because all of the bells and whistles, all of the graphics, all of the cool cutscenes and stuff has kind of faded away. And at this point, people are kind of more like, all right, where's the actual substance? And whenever you have like developers and people at Blizzard saying like, hey, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Like that's always the stupidest thing for a publisher or a developer to say. Like, if you don't like our game, don't buy it. It's like, yeah, no, duh, Captain, obvious. Like, if I'm not going to like it, I'm not going to play it. But you shouldn't tell your audience that. That doesn't get them on your side. Not to mention, there was that post that somebody brought up recently where someone could probably post it in chat. But they said, specifically in regards to the way the content was implemented, that they're looking at the long game in regards to the BFA expansion. And I'm just like, what? It's an expansion. It's not like you expect it to be finished. Like, when you look at previous expansions, you expect the content, like Cataclysm, you're expecting everything to be kind of contained and like have all of this content and not be like a work in progress. Like BFA in many ways to me felt like a an expansion in early access. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that, but that's kind of how I experienced the expansion myself.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And that is the main reason I even brought out this point is because everybody that plays BFA at this point knows that it's an incomplete game, basically. And my main gripe with Blizzard, and I feel like they can give themselves the luxury of launching an incomplete expansion. They're launching things that I don't think any other, let's say, small company that is releasing their first MMO could get away with. And I'm just so unhappy with it that I just find it's hard to find anything else that can compete with them just because of how long they've been here and how big of a company they are. You know?
Yeah, someone in chat just said it best. They said beta for Azeroth. BFA. But my last point on that, to wrap things up, is that I agree with you. I think really at the end of the day, the reason why a lot of these companies, and like the Black Desert thing is an example, but so is the BFA thing with Blizzard, a lot of these companies can kind of get away with this stuff because we just don't really have any other options. And that's kind of the unfortunate state of like the MMORPG community at the moment, or like the genre itself, is that we don't have a whole lot of like equal options, or options that are kind of unique enough to where we would feel like we're getting a different experience that we couldn't get from playing WoW. And that's like the biggest problem I think in the industry, is that these people can get away with bad business practices. They can get away with being unfair. They can get away with launching beta for Azeroth. And there's really not a whole lot we can do except just not play it. But then that kind of means that we're screwed out on the genre itself. And I totally understand you guys when you say to me, well, I play it because I have nothing else to play. I understand that. Like, I get sad every day when I don't play an MMO every day. Like, that's just true. I love these games, right? Like, I love massive multiplayer online games, but people ask me all the time, which one do you play? Really none. I'm sorry, guys. I wish I could make this easier for you, but thank you for asking the question, Mini Van Helsing. That's a good one.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good one. Okay, we got another question in chat I wanted to get to. It was Blood Trolls. Thank you for saying that, Germa2. I don't know why I said elves. It was Blood Trolls. Somebody mentioned, did you watch the Skyland video about MMO YouTubers? He mentions you at one point, was wondering what we should take on it. I actually have no clue about the video, Rainy Tide. I don't know if... Should I know? You want to link it, maybe? Someone can give you privileges to link? Because I'm curious. Skyland, I've met Skyland in person. I'm curious what he would say about me. Because I can tell you this much, he didn't really have a whole lot to say to me in person.
Hey, thanks. But you've got the wrong guy.
Hey there,
I'm good
what's
at
up?
shooting people, cracking
Hey, what's up,
wise, and pretending
Germa2?
to know how to fight with my hands.
That's okay. So, I'll do the pitch another time. I kind of had an idea, but I'd rather just write it down because I'm not.
Yeah,
gonna
it's
just
easier.
start
I
it.
understand.
Okay, so I did have one question. It was something you brought up earlier. It was with the whole loot box and all that. So I've actually discussed this with a couple of different groups of friends, kind of just gauging on my own, just seeing how kind of divisive it is. And I know you kind of touched on it, but my main point is, let's say, for example, and I know it's been talked to death. Let's say loot boxes just went the route of, Overwatch, whereas you had the choice of getting, let's say, cosmetics, whether it be skins or what have you, through that. But in your personal opinion, because I've kind of thought about it this way too, do you think it'd be better if you had the choice to rather grind those out instead of just buying them through this, say, slot machine, whatever you want to put it, glorified, what have you? So say, for example, like, I don't know, let's say in WoW, there's a really nice transmog weapon that, one of those 0.001% drop rate, whatever, and let's say they had a box of swords that had a chance to have said one, slightly higher chance, not as much, and it's, I don't know, say reasonably priced. Do you think that would still be as bad as just having loot boxes at all, or would you just kind of go with the argument of they don't belong in games, period?
So I actually I'm going to make a bit of a bold claim. I'm not sure if I'm 100% on this yet, but I would say that if I remember correctly, the idea of a loot box actually didn't start first as like some thing that you would pay that you would get kind of random loot. Like actually, loot boxes in many ways, if you remember like the early ones, it was kind of like you spent your experience or your money in game and you would buy these loot boxes.
Those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so at some point, these companies realized that instead of doing it that way, you can make it to where it can be bought with currency, and the currency would be bought with money. And so they made it. It was kind of like a loophole to some extent. You're not. It's kind of like what Valve used to say. It's like you're not really making money, right? That's how they got away with it.
And all that, right? I remember that back then.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would say that the old idea of loot boxes I was totally fine with, because it's it's just normal progression. Like I don't have any issues with that. But the problem with as it stands now is that, and people unfortunately won't realize this, is that it's kind of inherently meant to be pay to win. And what I mean is that a developer, and I'm not just going to say it's a developer who wants this. It's usually going to be a publisher in this case, but they're going to want you to implement a loot box system, because once you implement the system, even if they allow you to unlock that, like let's say, for example, Star Wars Battlefront, they allow you to unlock it with in-game currency or in-game XP, it's going to take you a long time, and it has to. Business-wise, it makes sense for them to make the grind much longer than it would be if you were to spend money. And so that's kind of like the problem that Battlefront 2, the EA Battlefront 2 had, was in regards to that, was like, yeah, you could buy these boxes, but it was far more, it would have taken, I think someone did the math, it was like 3,000 hours to fully unlock one class or something like that. It was something ridiculous.
Weird high number like that. I remember that.
And that's kind of the problem, I think, with loot boxes, is that it's inherently antagonistic towards progression because they want to keep moving the goalposts. They don't want progression to be easy. They don't want you to get a bunch of loot boxes to where you don't have to spend money. They want you to like slowly get a loot box trickled in with your progression, like kind of like Overwatch does it. But they want you to actually, fork over the cash and be like, okay, maybe I need to actually buy this if I'm going to get, the skin that I actually want.
Right. Yeah, I think another issue with it, at least on Overwatch's end, and I think what made a lot of people more angry was the whole thing with Activision trademarking, the whole thing where they would queue up they had some kind of system. I don't know if it was ever actually implemented, but it was like something along the lines of you had chances to play with someone on your team that had like a really nice skin, and you see them doing well, so then it makes you want to buy them. Or you go up against someone that has a nice skin, and they just dominate you, and I'll give you, like, it's some weird algorithm. I don't remember the exact details, but I know that was another, like, kind of big topic in that for a little while, and I can kind of understand, at least on that end, why that would be bad. But for me, I never really had any issues with loot boxes. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite if I said I never bought any. I have, I'll be honest. But to me, I think if, like you said, more games kind of went either the old route or just kind of stuck to cosmetics, but once you can earn yourself, like kind of how Overwatch does it. But, that's obviously kind of controversial even then. It's not as bad, but then again, it's one of those things, at least to me, that there's never there won't ever be a real resolution to this. It's just going to keep going and going until it gets to wherever it goes next.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I feel like it had to get to this point of being like almost like grossly exaggerated in order for like the market as a whole to be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't allow this. But I should specify that buying cosmetics I don't have an issue with. But again, the buying cosmetics thing has also been kind of tainted because like you look at games like Black Desert Online, where as far as I know, you basically can't look any different if you don't purchase an outfit. So it's like there's very little options to change the way your character looks unless you're going to pay for an outfit. And that's always been quite popular in the Asian MMOs. Like that's a big, like, I guess I would say bread maker for those companies is selling new outfits. Mm-hmm. But even that, like these days, it's just like I don't have any issue paying extra money for like a special kind of outfit. But now it just replaces like regular gear progression or just regular different armor sets and different like looks and such. And that's kind of where it's like, like it's gotten so annoying that it's become this way. But yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm not against microtransactions by principle, but I am against when they start to get into the territory of trying to be pay to convenience, because pay to convenience is like, it's one step away from pay to win. It's just like
Correct. Yeah,
yeah.
I can agree with that. I've played enough free games where it's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna trust it. I definitely agree with that. But I appreciate the time to talk. You know, I've been watching your videos for a long time, and it's always kind of interesting to kind of dissect and have an actual conversation with creators. So for sure, I appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for stopping by and asking a question. All right, we can keep going. We can do some more. I think we've gotten some really good questions. I'm glad we started this segment on our second episode. I wish we did this sooner. Hey, what's up, Smurfs?
Hey,
What do you want to talk about?
I was wondering what your opinion was on the large amount of games we're seeing being remastered, and if you think it detracts from work on newer IPs.
Wow, that's actually an interesting premise. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about the remasters / remakes within the context of kind of opportunity costs. And that's really what that is to me, is like opportunity cost, right? I mean, for people who don't know, is like the concept of you put time into this, that means you probably can't put time into this. So you have to pay your opportunity cost or whatever else, which in this case would be the time spent. And I guess, I mean, that's a fair argument. I mean, I would probably argue though that it's not. I mean, I know everyone's going to bring up the whole Silent Hill remasters that were really bad, which basically was because of the kind of concept I was just going to mention, which is like they like delegate it to a smaller team, and that smaller team doesn't have a whole lot to do. But in the case of mini remasters, they've already demonstrated that they make shit games. So I understand that we can't just rely on them giving it to their B team or C team, because it just ruins the legacy of that game. But yeah, I guess it really depends on the company. I mean, did you have a company in specific that you were thinking of when you thought of the question? Because as a whole, I would say it's kind of confusing to know, because we don't know exactly what's going on behind closed doors, if that makes sense.
Specifically, no. I'm just more thinking in general. We have a lot of small publishers who could use, well, I guess small devs who could use a bigger publisher working with them, and the bigger publishers seem to be spending money on things like the never-ending remaster of Final Fantasy VII instead of putting money into maybe pushing out a game like Dead Cells, which could have had a bigger budget behind it.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. You know what? I think, unfortunately, that just comes down to selling classics works, and it has worked for, till the end of time. And so I think although it's annoying, and I actually now I understand some of the criticism against remasters. I used to not really understand the criticism against it, but now I kind of do. Based on what you're saying, you're kind of saying it's like a loss of opportunity cost. So I mean, I would say that I don't think it's ever going to go away, truly. But I will agree with the example that you brought up, that the recent Nintendo Direct, which I watched, by the way, it was a little bit absurd. They're like, all right, guys, here comes all of our new Nintendo Switch versions of Final Fantasy old games. And it's like, it's kind of like a meme, because they're like, our new announcement of old games. And you're like, aw. And you want, like, for example, why don't you put classic Zelda games on the platform? Like, that's what I want to play. Put the classic, the HD remakes of Majora's Mask on the Switch. But I don't know. It's weird that they all of a sudden announced all those Final Fantasy games right at the same time, and we're like, here's all these Final Fantasy games. Everyone's so happy. Meanwhile, I'm kind of like, I love Final Fantasy, but not on my Switch. I'm just kind of like, yeah, maybe you would have been better off spending that time on like working on the online portion of the Switch, which is not so good at the moment. So I don't have a solution necessarily. But I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's a very fair point.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for asking. All right, what else we got? We got any more before we wanted to head out? You're back. What's up, RC Win?
Okay, so I actually have a good question now. Okay, so I don't think you heard, but so about the 2K games, they had released a statement that told people, because in Belgium they were trying to take out loot boxes, and 2K games might be a target of them soon, and I don't think, but they also asked about, 2K Games asked their gamers and players to, like ask their government people to like lobby and ask for loot boxes to be in games. So what is your opinion on that?
Oh man, that's like that reminds me of, like, you guys know the story of the big bad wolf and like the three little pigs or whatever. It's like if the big bad wolf would be like, "Hey, little pigs, can you guys lobby for opening your door so I can just like feast upon you?" Because I mean, really, that's what they want. They want your pocketbook in this case. But it's just like, it sounds like the big bad wolf is like lobbying for people to want to get eaten by him. I don't know. It almost seems like a joke, like for them to even like say such a thing. But I understand they're trying to protect their business in every way possible. But man, have a little bit of shame, guys. I mean,
yeah. Because when I heard that, I was like, at first I took a break from 2K Games because I played the basketball games. I never indulged in loot box of that game, but I have indulged in loot boxes on phone apps, and I had a problem with one of them, but I got off it finally, and it does annoy me because I have a friend who plays it. I'm like, I feel bad for him because he might spend some money on it sooner or later. I'm worried, but yeah, thank you.
yeah, no problem. Good question. All right, any last takers? It looks like we might have 1, 2 more. Anyone in chat, by the way, you don't have to join voice chat. You can also just ask me a question. Just make sure to @me in the Twitch chat, please, because that's just going to be easier for me to read. It like highlights it or whatever else. That seems to be it for Discord. Okay, there we go. We're done with the call-in section, unless anyone else wants to ask any questions in Discord or Twitch chat specifically. Wow, we're running at about right under 2 hours, which is about where I'm trying to shoot for. Like, I don't want to be any higher than 2 hours, so I really think this is probably a good point to stop. Oh, someone asked, where do we submit the game ideas? So you're going to submit them to my Discord. So just message me in Discord, private message me, and I'm going to sort through all of them. And then, of course, if I find multiple ones that are pretty good, I'll probably read all of them, and I'll let the audience choose which one is the best. But as it stands, since I haven't been getting, I mean, I've only done it once, but since I haven't got a whole lot of responses, I'll probably just pick them myself. 30 years after the defeat of Sauron, the elves have retired to the Evermore, the kingdoms of men, and some hobbits have moved to the old elven lands, and some younger noblemen have started to try and claim. Oh, that's your... Oh, you probably want to save that. Questions, Trick Check. This is the question segment of the podcast, where we just, ask questions, talk about random things, or whatever else. I'm glad you like it, someone. Someone XDDD. And I'll end it on your question. What is your opinion so far on Ashes of Creation? What has been showed, like combat? So we talked about that last podcast. So now you got to go watch it in order to know. But I've timestamped everything on my YouTube channel if you don't have the patience to sit through all of it. But I'll say that I'm surprised that the combat was as action-oriented as it ended up being. I'm actually quite surprised. I expected it to be kind of more standard tap target fare. In fact, the last time I saw it, I think it was a little bit more standard tap target fare, as far as I could tell. Thank you for the bit donation, Staximus, by the way. But yeah, it was, I don't know. It looked a lot more action-oriented than I thought, which, again, that's a good thing for me. I think that, obviously, it's very, early. It's alpha at the moment. But in my opinion, out of all of the Kickstarters, I think Ashes of Creation have made the most leaps in development. I mean, if you just look at like other products like Camelot, Crowfall, Chronicles of Illyria, if you look at Shadow of the Avatar before it launched, Albion, all of these different games, I feel like when you look at like base state, like how it started, Ashes of Creation compared to how it is now has made the biggest improvements. So that's really all I can say right now. I'll have to get my hands on it. I know I was in California, and Lazy Peon got the chance to go try it out, and he seemed quite stoked about it all. So that's pretty exciting. It's also really cool that the developers are quite open. So whenever they invited Lazy Peon over, they didn't even make him sign an NDA, which is like incredible to me. I respect how open that company's being. Though I know the whole my.com stuff has got people up in arms, and I totally understand why. I mean, I literally just did a video on a game that's like very related to that. But yeah, good question. Can you stream for another 8 hours while I sleep? Does my voice help you go to sleep? Now, I like how everyone starts asking questions now that I said that I'm leaving. All right, I'll answer your question, Trick Checked, because I saw you didn't get a chance to ask one. What is your opinion of betas and how they feel nowadays versus in the past or early access? So there's multiple types of betas, but I'd say the most popular ones that you'll see are either marketing betas, aka Black Ops 4's Black Ops or Blackout beta. That's a marketing beta. I mean, mind you, they have a lot of technical issues in that game. I've personally played it myself, and I have a lot of technical issues with it. But that's basically what I like to call like a marketing open beta. And then there's like actual betas, like closed betas. Like, for example, Camelot Unchained is lock and key, which is very traditional NDA. You can't talk about it. It has a private forum. They don't show you a whole lot of gameplay. It's very closed doors. That's a true beta. That's a beta in which everybody is actively trying to better the game and test the game and stress test the game and whatever else. Those types of betas aren't very common. And I think the main reason is because in this day and age, not a whole lot of people want to develop or help a developer develop their game. If you think about it, like old MMOs, we were totally willing to put all of this time into testing things. But I don't know about you guys. Since I've gotten older and now I'm 25, I don't really have the time to beta test like I used to. I mean, I'm in Camelot Unchained beta, for example, as well as I'm in the alpha for the New World. And I don't really test a lot in either of them. And that's because for me, it's like at this point when they're at such a beginning stage, it's not really useful for me to test a whole lot. For me personally, or for my audience, to tell my audience anything. Not to mention both of them have NDAs, so it's not like I can really talk about anything anyway. But I've just kind of noticed that. Now, early access... Early access is basically launching a game, hoping that you won't get the negative publicity, and also hoping that you can get paid to develop a game before the game's done developing. Which, again, total no-brainer for a developer, right? To launch early access these days, because they get to now make people pay for the development while they're developing the game. Now, the problems with that, as many of us know, unfortunately, Daisy, is that these games can be in early access for almost like innumerable amounts of years, like 5, 6 years, like 4, 3 years, like these insane long amounts of time. In fact, look at games like Paragon or games like Fortnite, or games like what's another example? Nosgoth, which these games are basically in permanent open betas of sorts, where it's like at this point, who's even keeping score? You know, what is considered finished? The goalposts keep getting moved in one direction or in another direction. And it's hard to know what is considered a finished product and what isn't. And with the amount of early access games, it's definitely problematic, especially in the realm of MMORPGs, because let's be honest, MMOs mostly launched unfinished. Like there's a famous quote from Brad McQuaid where he literally says, MMOs are basically destined to launch unfinished. And while I understand his point to some extent, he doesn't have the best track record. But I understand his point to some extent from the perspective of, like, you're going to be constantly implementing new things. And so you're basically constantly in the state of developing, which is why I think they're very hard to do right. But yeah, I hope that answers your question to some extent. Early access is simple. If you charge money, you should be critiqued. I totally agree. Early access at this point, okay, I'll end on this. Stop getting duped by the early access. And what I mean by this, by all means, if you want to buy an early access game, that's totally your prerogative. You're totally willing to do that. But buy an early access game with the idea that maybe this game's going to be shit. Are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to refund the game? Or are you going to be one of those people who proceed to tell everybody else, it's early access, it's early access, it's early access for every bit of criticism they have? Please don't be that person. We're supposed to be able to critique these things. As soon as I can exchange $40, $50, we should, you know what I'm saying? After I can exchange $40, $50, I have the right to critique already. That's a product. It might not be a finished one, but it's a product. Once you charge that amount of money, it's a product. And please don't be the person who says, it's early access, it's early access, it's early access. It's like, dude, that marketing tactic is only going to work if you keep saying that shit over and over again, because it is early access, but it's also a product. It's a commodity. You had to pay for it already. It has a certain level of scrutiny that should be applied. I'm not saying the same level of scrutiny for a fully launched game, but it certainly should have some level of scrutiny. But all right, I think we've made it to the end of this podcast. I don't really have anything else to talk about, and I don't want to keep you guys here any longer than I need to. We're currently running at 2 hours and 6 minutes, which is about the time period that I'd like to finish at. Around 2 hours is a good, I would say. I would say 2 hours is pretty fair. I mean, you guys can agree or disagree with me in chat. Maybe 1 hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and a half. Basically, at the end of the day, I'm not going to arbitrarily end chats just because they've gone over in time. Doom Black Dragon, who's been helping with the podcast, he gives me kind of like general ideas of when I'm ran over on certain segments, so we can try and keep it like uniform to some extent or structured to some extent. But ultimately, we'll go as long as we need to. And at this point, I think we've said enough. And I'm glad we had a lot of cool conversation today. I really liked inviting the audience in, because I actually was going to have a guest on, but he unfortunately was unable to come. And so instead of just doing like a typical podcast like I did in my first one, I wanted to really try and involve the audience a lot more. And I think that's going to be a staple from now on throughout the thing. I'd like to involve you guys, the audience, into the discussion as much as I possibly can. But at this point, length matters less than the fact that it remains interesting. That's a good point. So yeah, for you guys, remember the topic of the week for Pitch Your Game is the Lord of the Rings MMO. So please send those to me. The winner is going to win one of my pieces of merchandise. You can choose what it is. And if there's anything you guys want me to talk about for next week's podcast on Monday, you can send me an email. You can send me a message on Discord. Anything of that sort. If you think that there's an interesting topic that you want to make sure that I get to, you can send that to me, because that'll actually help me a little bit. So I don't have to do the research all on my own. So you guys can actually kind of also be a part of how the show kind of like manifests to some extent. Can't go on long enough. Did they cut content to later charge or say, hey, look at these updates? But yeah, anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. Thank you for stopping by, especially those who are always here. I look forward to seeing you guys here more often. I had a really good time doing our second podcast of 6 Pixels Under. This is our episode 2, so that's exciting. And I've kind of, if you've noticed, I've added like some background images, the logos over here. I've added some of the call-in segments. I'm trying to pretty it up as much as I can, but I'm not going to go over the top. And this one will actually be uploaded on YouTube for people who missed the early aspects, or on SoundCloud, or on Stitcher, or on iTunes, or on Spotify. It's pretty much everywhere that you can possibly imagine. I tried to put it so it can be accessible to you guys in your cars, on your phones, wherever you're at. And yeah, I thank you guys for stopping by to watch this podcast, and I hope to see you guys next Monday on our next episode, episode 2. This basically concludes episode 2. I had a really good time. I hope you guys had a really good time, and certainly I enjoyed interacting with the audience, like I said earlier. And that was fun. And Death of a Game is coming out tomorrow. Should be coming out tomorrow. And I should also have another video coming out tomorrow. So it should be a double upload. So it's going to be exciting. For my loyal followers who are here today, you'll be the first to know that I'm making a video on Chronicles of Spellborn. And I'm also making a video on combat systems and MMORPGs. So you get the scoop, so to say. So goodbye for real. I hope you guys had a good time and have a good rest of your Monday. I know Mondays can be quite boring. Peace.